good morning or good evening, depending on when you're tuning in with us. And thank you for joining our second From the Field episode of FP Next, bringing you updates straight from the farm field. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah McPheeters, and I'm here with Curt Arns.
Yes, Sarah, here we are again for one of our in-the-field checkups, I guess, and we're going into Husker country today. So last time we were up in North Dakota on the wheat side, and today we're down in Nebraska in my country on the corn side, and we're really fortunate to have Scott McPheeters from Gothenburg, Nebraska, who farms by Gothenburg, and also spends a little time promoting the ethanol side of things too. But Scott, we want to welcome you to FP Next.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And I'll offer all the information I have, and some of it will be fascinating, hopefully.
Absolutely. I know we're excited for the discussion, but before we get into the crops and everything, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself, your farm, your family down there in Gothenburg?
Sure. Well, I'm actually the fifth generation on our farm, and farm with two sons who are the sixth, obviously, and their families. So it's definitely a family operation, and we have primarily, it's all food grade corn, both white and yellow, and then also soybeans, and we have rangeland that we manage there for livestock operations. We don't have livestock ourselves, but get to watch musk thistles, tanks, and fences.
Yes. So Scott, we're going to dig right into it and just see what are the field conditions right now? How do things look as far as your crops out in the ground? I know there've been a few storms kind of rolling through your area, so maybe you got a little bit of rain.
We did. So it was, I think, the second driest fall and winter on record, it was pretty ominous. And then and I was just looking on my calendar, I keep track of that sort of thing, that it started to rain on May 24th, I believe is the first one. Nope, I'm sorry, May 18th. Got like an inch 40, and then another 16, another inch 40, another 60. And then, so pretty soon we ended up with around 10 to 11 inches of rain in 10 days, which is almost half of our annual rainfall. But the crops were all planted. I think everybody in the area was done. And of course, it's not bad to plant into dry conditions unless the ground is too hard. But ours is a silty clay loam, so it was good planting conditions, but really dry. And so then that came, and so it's really kind of gone from, I told somebody the other day, it's gone from like brown and dry every place to looks like Ireland around here now. So
I know we got a lot of those rains, and so did Austin, the farm we visited with last week. And the pastures, let me tell you, look great. There's probably a little bit more mud than anybody is wanting, but we're always thankful for the moisture. And so with that, what do you think your outlook on the crops are going to be for the rest of the growing season? Kind of what are you expecting, or what's the forecast telling you?
Well, it seems like we're a little behind, because typically when we used to do gravity flow irrigation, we would be done with cultivation first pass, and then we'd be building the ridges so we could run the water down the furrows. And it seemed like always on Father's Day, the corn was almost to get too tall, and you had to get over it or you'd break it off because underneath the tractor. And this year it's just probably knee high, which maybe a little less in places, but not much more than that here where I am. So boy, it seems like we're maybe a week behind or something, but haven't had a tremendous amount of heat. It kind of goes in bursts. We have a really hot day, and then we'll have some dreary, cooler ones. But no, everything looks good so far, and we're always thankful for the moisture. One of my sayings, that, and I don't think it's mine originally, obviously, but farmers never complain about rain, just the timing.
Boy, that's the absolute truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how about, I know that, tar spot showed up a little bit early in Nebraska this year, and in I think 3 counties so far, and I'm sure it's probably in a bunch of others. What are some of your disease, weed, insect issues, or at least things that you monitor on your place?
Well, and I guess that's the flip side of being in a semi-arid area. Lots of those things that travel or need moisture or humidity don't come out this way. The pivots do increase the relative humidity in the area, but we escape a lot of those things. I don't think we've ever had, that I know of, like yield limiting tar spot or things like that. and I'm kind of exhibiting my ignorance a bit because I think that's what causes it in the main part of the Corn Belt. Is we just don't have it here. But the probably what we struggle with the most is we're in the flyway for the sandhill cranes, and so they drop all kinds of things from all kinds of places in their droppings, and so we have, whereas everybody now has hybrid water hemp, and of course kochia has been around for a while, and so those are the big ones that we battle. And with the rain, it was a little challenging to get a herbicide on at the right time. The pre-emerge usually is what we do. And so that's our big problem out here is, of course, if we get hail with the rain or lack of rain, but getting the weeds controlled. We used to cultivate a lot, and they've never found any weeds that are resistant to iron. If you till, you're going to get them generally. But those are the things that we struggle with, is the silly weeds, it seems like.
I know we've been seeing a lot more and more about those specific weeds you mentioned popping up all over the place. And it's just one of those things. And I like what you said, iron beats the weeds usually. But talking a little bit, you mentioned the food grade corn, and we were visiting a little bit about it yesterday as well. We were getting ready for this, but tell me a little bit about the genetics and the varieties planted, and maybe some of the differences between like the food corn versus, the cattle corn that a lot of people maybe don't know the two big differences about it.
Sure. Well, the things that the millers or the snack food companies like are starch. That's what they utilize, and so the heavier test weight are typically more popular. And generally, they do research to find out which the taste and the milling characteristics, and then give us a list of hybrids that are that work for them. And usually, it's a lot of hybrids that we would plant even if it wasn't food grade. So that helps a lot. But there's a few specific ones that, especially the longer season ones, those are better typically for milling, but they're also hard to get mature at the right time. And rather not harvest over 18%, it just tears up the pericarp too much. And so it's sometimes hard to wait to harvest until the last week in October. We've even started the last week in October one time on corn. There just wasn't anything that was ready earlier. So those are a couple things they look for. Obviously maturity, but milling characteristics and test weight and starch quality, taste. So there's a pretty good list to choose from though for the hybrids we plant, both white and yellow. And there's a surprising difference in peculiarities, I guess I would say, about white corn. Some white corn reacts to herbicides differently, or typically it's longer season. I guess they just haven't dedicated the genetic research to making shorter season hybrids because it isn't that big a market, is the way I understand it. But they're still good hybrids, and we typically plant the white corn after soybeans, and there's some response there that nobody can really explain, that your racehorse white hybrid and your racehorse yellow hybrid, the white will usually win after beans and not necessarily after some other crop.
So you talked a little bit about the cultivation days, and I always have to bring my own experiences of iron blight in corn. Especially on terraces when you had to go around corners, that was always a little bit trickier. But you talked a little bit about markets. What is the market outlook for the food grade corn, but also just for your field corn this year? I mean, what is your yield goals, generally speaking, and then where do you see the markets going into fall?
Sure. Well, we have some ground that's just by its nature not quite as productive, but most of it is pretty highly productive. And so our yield goal is normally 250 bushels per acre or better, and 80 bushels on beans. And if barring hail, we can control the water somewhat. I will have to tell you, though, that you can't raise a crop with irrigation. You can keep it alive until it rains, but you just need natural precipitation. and we do have corners and some other things that are, we don't like to call them dry land around here. We call them rain fed. Same thing, but those, probably, boy, if you make half that on dry, true rain fed places that you don't know what's going to happen, that's pretty good. But don't have a lot of that. We're primarily irrigated. And as far as, so I guess that's the yield goal. We do everything grid sampling for soil, and then have prescription maps for fertility and planting and hybrids and all kinds of things. And so it's a fairly lofty goal, the 250 or better. And that's like whole field yields, not just saw that go by on the yield monitor there for a minute. But it's a pretty lofty goal, but we're pretty careful and do everything we can to get the productive spots to be as productive as they can, and probably not use quite the resources on the ground that's just not going to make that much. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. And I think it's always interesting to see because, of course, from where I'm from on the eastern side of North Dakota, I did not grow up seeing a lot of irrigators. And then moving the farther west I go and the farther south I end up going, there's just more and more. But I like when you say rain fed versus dry land. I might have to steal that and start using it. And then can you share a little bit? I know this might be like a crystal ball if you have one in your office or in your house back there, but tell me a little bit what you think the markets are going to do, what it looks like. I know yesterday you were out hauling some corn to your customers, but tell me a little bit about what you're thinking it's going to look like for the rest of this year.
They are typically cyclical and highly unpredictable, but I think we're in a strange place with stocks to use ratio. Typically, if we had this low of stocks, the price would be higher. And they're expecting, a big crop. And of course, it's always a big crop until stuff starts to happen to it. And so it seems like we are lower than we should be with this stocks to use ratio. But we all know that, and there's a lot of really wet weather in the east, south and east. And I think some of them actually had some prevented planting, but it's been a couple years of just about cost of production, and you have to put off purchases like updating equipment or something because it isn't in the financials. But I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. Well, and as you get older, you say you're pretty optimistic when you're young, and you say, "Oh yeah, it'll get better," and it does. But as you get older, you say it always works that way until it doesn't. But I'm sure I have a different view of the markets than my sons do, just because I've seen several market analysts who have the 5-year average, 10-year average, 15-year average of the December corn futures price and where it tracks after the middle of June. And it is astounding. It's just always drops. It's a elevator down, as they say. And except when it doesn't, that's the thing. We say, well, boy, we should just have our corn marketed or our crops marketed, the last of them by or priced. And that's one thing that's a little bit different about growing for the major snack food company is they know they want the corn, they know when they want the corn, and it's a basis contract, and there's an opportunity for some quality incentive and things like that, and for storage, because the further out you store it, of course, the better the basis is. But as far as not having it marketed, not having it, we have it marketed, we just don't have it all priced, if that makes sense. And that's a really nice thing. You just always know it's going to go, but you need to get it priced.
So, Scott, I had one last question for you. Precision technology is so important for so many farmers, how much things have changed. How does that play a role, like in your irrigation or in your farming practices, precision tech?
It is revolutionized. We were converting from gravity flow to pivot over a 20-year period. And with gravity flow, you just had to go because you knew it took a week to get over it, and if you needed it, would be over it once a week. So it was kind of hard, and it seems like there was times when you just got it irrigated and then it rained, and it was very frustrating because it didn't do any good. Or you were trying to get it irrigated and it didn't rain, and you thought maybe it would. So pivots are certainly more friendly that way, that it takes, so if you have a reasonable amount of gallonage per acre on your, if you have a small well, obviously it takes longer to get your pivot around at a half inch or whatever you're applying. But the bigger the well, the better, because you can go around fast and you can react when you need to apply the water, not have to guess ahead or see what might happen. So there's also variable rate irrigation and down to the nozzle on some. We don't have anything like that. We don't really do too much. Our pivots are homogeneous enough within the pivot that we can pretty much just run the same rate for the full circle. Having said that, though, there are pivots near the river that are sandier, and so those we still don't variable rate irrigate, but we are able to tune in what we need for which fields and what soil type and crop stage. So, and technologies enable us to do that. We have soil moisture probes that report back, and it's kind of a good feedback loop, because sometimes you think things are fine, and for instance, it's supposed to be 101 on Friday here and 102 on Saturday, and if you aren't preparing for that, and you don't, if you don't prepare for that and don't have a feedback loop, whether you are doing all right, it's going to be a surprise. So the technology is just, and we have telemetry on the pivots, so we can control those and shut them off if it's raining in the middle of the night. That's really nice, just to turn them off, so not have to run around to everyone.
Right, absolutely. There's so much unique technology and fantastic technology. It really seems like it's helping a lot of farmers be more productive on their operations. And Scott, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I know it is a busy time of year. Still, it's always a busy time of year for farmers, right? When the snow is gone. So thank you for joining us. And that wraps up this From the Field episode, which is our latest offering from FP Next, which is, of course, powered by John Deere.
Yes, we're powered by John Deere, and it's great to, check in with farmers from the field and kind of see, like Scott, what the crops are doing all across the nation. And Sarah, we just keep heading around the country with different crops and all kinds of farmer insights as we continue this series, right?
Absolutely. I know our next From the Field episode, we will be heading down south. And don't forget, our From the Fields are video episodes. So if you're listening on a podcast platform, jump on over to Farm Progress or YouTube and you can see our bright, shining faces. And then make sure you come back next Tuesday for our deep dive episode. We'll be diving into a unique opportunity, the Women in Agribusiness Summit. And so we're excited to visit about that.
Yes, that'll be a great episode and, really a special feature. So we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And of course, we wish everyone a safe and prosperous growing season. And remember, if it's agriculture, your friends at Farm Progress have you covered. Here's wishing you high yields and good weather. We'll see you next time.